Hello everybody. There's nobody here yet, so just give my screen a clean so it doesn't look like I've smeared Vaseline on there to take the years off. I'm afraid my ring light is broken, so the lighting isn't as good as it was. I'll get that fixed. Let's wait and see who comes in. What we are studying and doing tonight is a spirit guides workshop. So this is actually something that people will be able to access at any time, and I'll put it into the meditations section as a resource, because you can use this meditation at any point to connect with your spirit guides. So I'm just going to wait a moment, pause the video and see who comes in. Okay, hello everybody and welcome to a session that is going to be all about spirit guides. So my experience of spirit guides, and also I want to take you into a meditation to experience your spirit guides. So in the first instance, let's just connect in a circle together. So the people who are here and the people who are watching this back, we can join by taking some breaths together and to just find ourselves in this little moment of me time. So very simply, as we always do, hands over heart, eyes closed, and taking 3 or maybe 4, whatever feels right, lovely long breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Using what we talked about in the breath meditation to really do that circle of breathing and really just allowing your body to go where it needs to go with the breath. So allowing the breath to separate you from the day that you've had, anything that's worrying you, and just being within your body right now as we are. Whenever you're ready, coming back to the space. Okay, so spirit guides. Spirit guides are something that I have studied and worked with mostly in the past, so it feels like a bit of a resurgence for me. I feel like when I started my spiritual path properly and for myself was in my late 20s, and I undertook a course of study with a woman I knew, and we'd go around to her house. No, it was not her house. It was her mother or her mother-in-law. I'm not sure which. It was her house. It was a little old lady's house, bless. And we'd all cram into the living room and pay $5 a session. And we kind of did all kinds of different spiritual stuff, spirit guides, angels, healing, psychic development, stuff like that. So I must have been about 28, 29, 30, I'm not sure, but it went on for a long time, and I made some friends who I'm still friends with at that point, even to this day, and it was just a little bit magical. And I think when I'm teaching spiritual development or spirit guides or anything like that, I have to remember to take myself back to that point of kind of walking into spirituality with a sort of innocence and hopefulness, and trying to put everything in its place, or have a bigger understanding. And my understanding shifts, it shifts all the time. But at that point, it was really beautiful to have and to begin to learn about this concept of spirit guides. I have, over more recent years, probably kind of walked away from that concept a little bit, thinking that maybe spirit guides are just the way that spirit chooses to present itself to make itself palatable. You know, it appears in forms that we can connect with and understand. Same with angels, same with power animals. But I don't know, maybe that was a bit cynical of me, or trying to be too ahead of my game, or maybe it's just a bit boring. It's lovely to actually think about spirit in terms of personality and characters who are showing up for us, whether that is a real thing or not, or whether it's just spirit possessing a certain character for a period of time. Does it really matter? And actually, I've kind of done a bit of work with my spirit guides recently, and picked up where I left off. So the spirit guides that I learned about all that time ago, sort of 12 or so years ago, it was the same ones who came back round when I kind of went back into meeting with them and seeing who was there and what was what. And it was kind of like, oh, there you are, you were there all along. And I think living life got in the way of me fostering that connection or that communication. Also, a little bit of cynicism. I think I'm always quite cynical, actually, even though what I do for a living is the opposite. But I think it's wise to keep a little bit cynical about each and everything that you encounter. It just gives a nice, healthy balance. But anyway, there I was with my two kind of spirit guides revisiting me and like, oh, right, okay, here we are again. This is lovely. And so I don't know how far you guys have experience of spirit guides. My experience of them then and now, it always feels very, I guess it's quite elusive. So when I was working under this woman, Deborah, who was a lovely woman, she would talk about her spirit guide like as if he was right there in the room and she could see him and she could experience him and he was chatting away at her. And he was, a really interesting character. My spirit guides to feel a little bit more aloof. They're there and I can kind of contact them if I really want to through meditation. And they may or may not show up. And I think that perhaps the way I am guided by them is more unconscious. So they perhaps drop stuff into my head or, give that kind of divine intervention, the pushes and the pulls of our own intuition. I definitely don't see them around me. I don't know, hello, down there or anything like that, as I have seen people do. And I think that's sweet, but to me it just makes it a bit more difficult to access if you're not a psychic medium, or you don't claim to be a psychic medium, and you don't suddenly see a spirit guide in the corner of your room. Does that then mean that you're not connected? Well, I think it doesn't mean that. We're all connected, but perhaps the level of connection is different for each and every one of us, and what we choose to believe about our spirit guides is different for each and every one of us. And for some of us it might be that we feel connected to a spirit guide is somebody who we have known, like a grandma or a grandfather or an ancestor, or for other people it might be an animal, or it could be some embodied sort of version of themselves, or there's loads of different ways that these spirit guides can show up. And I feel like I've got one that's quite human, who I possibly have lived lives with, and who also might be incarnated in some respect on this planet right now, although I don't believe I've ever met them. But also another one that's more angelic and kind of fairy-like. And I did have one right back at the beginning of my journey. If any of you have read The High Heel Guide to Spiritual Living, some of this will actually probably sound quite familiar. There was one called Cerebrial, who was a white winged horse, which I was ever so fond of. And then I felt like he was there for the beginnings of my journey, and then he left. So, and I was very sad about that at the time. I felt devastated, but now it's like, okay. So again, spirit guides are whatever. I think they're whatever you want them to be, and also sometimes other things. Like, so you might we'll do a meditation in a bit that will perhaps present an idea of a spirit guide. It might not. You might get a name, you might get a form, you might get a shape, you might not. You might just get a feeling that there is something there. I don't want to dictate what that might be, because it's not. I remember the way I was introduced to spirit guides, it all felt a little bit cartoony. Like, you know, and I don't want to kind of pigeonhole it in any particular way. Like, our spirit guides can be all kinds of things. And I've had other experiences throughout my life where I believe there was some kind of guide there, whether it was those guides or another, you know, the synchronicities, the coincidences. There was a period of time, actually, I think it was around lockdown, and I always find this one quite interesting, where every so often I'd noticed that my head was thinking in like an West African accent, which I'm not familiar with, and I have no friends from that kind of area. I don't know why that voice kept coming in my head. But I just had to take a moment to separate myself from it and think, hang on a minute, why is this accented voice appearing in my head with wisdom? And at first I thought it was me. I just assumed it was me. You know, your head does silly things like putting on an accent. I don't know. I don't know what I thought. But then I thought, hang on a minute, what this voice is saying is actually quite sensible, and it sounds like guidance, and it sounds like a kind of mother hen pecking at me to do different, to be different. And so I just chose to think, okay, I don't know who you are or what kind of guide you are, but I feel like this is a guide stepping forward and just inserting this direction in my head in a very different accent to my own. And I need to take ownership of that and recognize that this is not actually me just putting on a silly voice in my head, because it was so unconscious and it was just bubbling up. So weird, funny, interesting things like that. I've had a voice next to me in the car when I was alone just say out loud, there are no mistakes, you know. I talk about that quite a lot, and that was pungent. That was just like, that was through my, I mean, a lot of the voices we hear of guidance feel like they're your own voice or they're an intuitive voice, but to hear something outside of yourself is quite awakening and alerting, and something in a different accent. I think it's really interesting, and I think we have things in different accents on television and stuff like that, so maybe that's why we overlook it if things like that happen. But actually I had to just go, no, this is not me, and it's not something I've heard on TV, and it's not, you know, an influence that's around me. This is some magic. So basically, yeah, spirit guides, there we go. What I wanted to do was, for the lucky few who are here, I want to take a card for you guys from your spirit guides. But before we do that, does anybody have any questions about spirit guides? You can either ask out loud. I may or may not have the answer, or you could type it in the chat. But please do if you have anything. No from Kate. Anything from Julia? How do we know if we have them, and how can we connect? Well, that's what we're going to do tonight. So I believe everybody has them. I really do. But I'll be honest, I found mine quite hard to connect to, like in comparison to, say, the woman who taught me, who, like I said before, was always nattering away to hers, and he was constantly in the room and constantly showing up. And it's hard to know you have them, and you have to do the work. But that's what this group is for, is to start to introduce us to these kind of concepts and to connect. So what we'll do tonight, shortly, is to do a meditation to attempt to connect with our spirit guides. What I will say about that meditation and the connection with spirit guides is it can feel, and I've always felt this with all my spiritual work, well, with this kind of spiritual work, with spiritual development work, is that I've always kind of felt like I'm just making it up inside my head. And it feels like it's a weird thing, because it feels like I'm making it up inside my head, but at the same time, sometimes it's uncanny and it's interesting, and it feels like you almost have to believe to see or experience. So it's almost like letting your guard down and recognizing that something could come through, like a loving, guiding presence. And yeah, going, okay, this feels like I'm just making it up. But then from that point, allowing it to flow and ebb and to become what it becomes. and asking for things like affirmation afterwards. So for example, with my white horse, Celebrial, that, you know, was a guide for a while for me, there was part of me that thought, am I just making this up? It's all a bit cliched, and white-winged horses and stuff like that. I mean, come on, Alice. I was quite cynical. I wanted to believe, I wanted it to be true, but I was also like, but actually I asked for signs and I was absolutely ridiculously inundated. Like, it got insane, the amount of white-winged horses that I then stumbled upon. And I don't mean just little ones. I mean, like, oh my God, they were everywhere. I was in Kentucky visiting my grandma, and I was inundated everywhere I looked, everywhere I went, like big, huge white-winged horses in the airport, like taking up whole walls. You know, I remember going into a healer's room to have Reiki, and she'd painted a white-winged horse on the wall, which I know white-winged horses are not hard to come across in spiritual communities, but this was not. This was everywhere. It was everywhere. It was every shop I went into, everything. And to the point that I've not experienced since, you know, it felt like white-winged horse month or something. It was like, it was incredible. So that's one way to know that you have them and to connect. So it's to do this kind of meditative work, get yourself in an altered state of consciousness where perhaps something will come through. And even if it's just something small, and I know sometimes, Julia, you struggle with visualization, but perhaps a feeling, or perhaps an opening, a crack of a door will begin to open in your mind, and perhaps something will come through in a dream, or in an understanding. And then after that, you can ask for signs to affirm it. You know, I don't have like this ongoing relationship with my guides where I'm chattering away to them every day. I source them sometimes when I need to, or I send up a message, oh, can you help me with this? But I don't really ask for a response back. I just trust that help will be given, and I think it usually is. So I have a kind of one-way relationship with mine, and every so often I go a bit deeper just to, and when I say every so often, at the minute, every decade or so, I'll go a bit deeper to kind of connect. But then that's up to the individual if they want to keep connecting on a more frequent basis, or build an altar to your guides, you know, and to keep that conversation flowing. You know, you can speak to them without requiring an answer back, or if you do want an answer back, you can ask for one to be given as a sign, or in a piece of writing, or in a piece of music, and see where it takes you. But I definitely think there are forces at large that play a part in plotting, grooving our lives, and that are loving. So I hope that kind of answers that question. So we will be connecting with some guides in a moment. But first of all, I just wanted to take some couple of cards, just for these basic Soulful Woman cards. So in doing this, I'll do one for the group, for anybody else who is obviously not here live, for all of us, so like a collective soul card, but then also one for each of you, Kate and Julia, from your guides or guide. So first of all, for the group, for everybody, our collective spirit, and perhaps there is one collective spirit guiding the people who happen to be in this space, is here to say, let's see, boundaries. That comes up over and over again, doesn't it? For many of us, my clear boundaries allow me to protect myself, nurture my intentions, and follow my true self. And I guess boundaries are important with spirit guides too, in terms of you don't just want to lay yourself open to anything and everything that's out there, because whilst I've never really encountered anything toxic or dangerous or, you know, demonic or whatever, I'm sure there are. I've read enough books to recognize that there might be some unfriendly spirits out there. So boundaries are important. So when you are welcoming in spirit guides, it's I guess the language you use is important. You know, I welcome in loving, caring guides who have my highest intention at heart and nothing less, that kind of thing. So if anyone was nervous about connecting with spirit guides, just make sure you frame it in a way that is protective, so you're not leaving any doors open to anything that is less than friendly. Okay, so messages now for Kate. Power of my voice. So this is from your spirit guides. Power of my voice. I speak my truth and express my feelings to others with care and compassion. So I feel like that's come up. Did that come up for you the other? Yeah. So there you go, stalker cards, repeat cards. This is what happens when we ask spirit to get involved. They keep telling us the same thing until we listen and abide by it. Okay, so then Julia, your card will be, oh, that's beautiful. Infinite self. So my infinite self dwells in the sweetness of this very moment. And I think that's just an interesting concept in that we are infinite. I believe that we're infinite. That's not one thing I'm cynical about. I believe that we go on forever in different forms. That's not something I'm cynical about. And however our form chooses to show up, it might, I sometimes think, is it even our own form? You know, like we might go, oh, you're just projecting and your spirit guide's just some version of yourself. Well, so what if it is, if our form is infinite and we choose to like cycle back round to ourselves to give ourselves guides that can help us perhaps from some higher place within our collective consciousness or our own consciousness or our future self or our past self or another life self. I mean, it's just, I think it's a bit mind-boggling when you start thinking about it like that. And maybe that's why we create and work with spirit guides, so that the mind boggle isn't quite so mind-boggly. So however we choose to see them, whether they are separate entities from ourselves or extensions of ourselves or extensions of spirit or something other than that, that I don't even have the words for, they are certainly, in my experience, around, and they do want the best for us, and they do step in and help, and they can be connected with, which is what we're going to do now. So if you want to get nice and comfortable, turn your screen off if you wish, and I will talk us through a nice and easy meeting our spirit guides meditation. And no pressure to you two who are here live or anyone watching this back to actually perform. You know, I think when I was doing this in the beginning, back when I started my spiritual path, I always felt a bit of a pressure to perform, like to get the right answer or to, you know something more as a result of taking this action. And actually, no, there's no pressure here to do anything other than to just open a door and see what comes through. And if nothing comes through, or if uncertainty comes through, or if you get one tiny little glimpse of something, then that's something to hold on to. And otherwise, just relax and just trust that you are opening a door, whether you can visualize it or experience it or not, and that actually you can continue to nurture that door through gentle inward conversation, contemplation, meditation. And no pressure on spirit to say anything or do anything for us either. We're just sort of opening our minds to them and seeing what comes through. So with that in mind, taking a nice deep breath and closing your eyes. And just taking a moment or two to just find yourself in as relaxed a state as you possibly can. And to assist with that relaxed state, let's take 5 breaths. So really cycling with the air through beautiful circles of self to really just remove any stresses, strains, tension, physical kind of tension as well. And just softening in our body as we take these 5 circle breaths. So beginning whenever is good for you. So we're going to begin by bringing in the elements, because we are working with the elements now. And if the elements make all that is, then they can certainly support us and help us in our quest to meet and connect with our spirit guides tonight. So I want you to imagine that you are by a riverbank. A beautiful, calm river flows in front of you. You can hear the beautiful sounds it makes, perhaps some rapids a little further down, but you're just at the still point, maybe a turn in the river. And it's not particularly deep. Gazing into the crystal clear, still waters, you can see yourself rippling out across the surface, recognizing yourself here and there in the water. Your form spreading itself across all kinds of ways of expression. You might just run your fingers through the water, allowing the image of yourself to break up and be carried, and recognizing that your infinite self is carried in that water, your reflection in every single raindrop of water that sits in the river forever, and that everything you touch has a way of spiraling back round to meet you and greet you, and feeling part of something bigger, something really huge maybe, and we don't have to understand what that is, but something that we certainly feel connected to. So we're not isolated in our spirituality or in our space by the river, but rather within this beautiful natural space, we're feeling fulfilled and held and connected. I want you to imagine that you're taking your shoes off and just dangling your feet into the river. So sat on the side of the riverbank, just allowing your feet to be within that streaming water, perhaps digging your feet down to the earth at the bottom of the riverbed and feeling it muddy and satisfying between your toes, and not being worried about getting dirty or having wet feet, just really enjoying that sensation. And taking a nice deep breath of the air around you. It feels so clean, so crisp, very purifying, as if it's almost just shifting away anything toxic and difficult within you that perhaps is stopping you from seeing clearly what you need to see, or connecting with spirit in a way that perhaps you would like to connect. Taking another deep breath, feeling your hands on the grass at the side of the riverbank as your feet slosh and splash and dig into the mud and the water. And noticing that beside you is either a candle and some incense burning, or maybe even a little fire just keeping you warm. So we have all the elements surrounding you, calling them in. And now consciously and actively calling them in. And you can, of course, say this out loud, or you could say it in your head. I call in earth. I call in air. I call in fire. I call in water. I call in all the elements that are known to me as I explore and expand my understandings. When you feel ready, in your mind or out loud, I want you to say, I call in my loving spirit guides. I call in my spirit guides who are with me right now, who are helping me with current situations. I call in the loving spirit guides that have led me to this moment. I call in the loving spirit guides who have perhaps been with me since childhood. I call in any spirit guide who has my highest and best purpose at heart and nothing less. And imagining yourself protected by a circle. You might want to imagine that you have a pocket full of salt and you reach in and you just put a circle of salt all around you, just flinging it up above you and surrounding yourself with this salt so that the only thing that can cross and connect with you right now is the most loving of angelic spiritual entities who are here to support you, to guide you, to hold you, to honor you, to gift you their wisdom. And then, as you sit by the riverside, having called in your guides, we'll just return to some deep breathing. Just allowing space for the guides to begin to make themselves known. But focusing on that circular breath, feet in the water, in the mud, hands in the grass, air in the lungs, fire by your side, awaiting whatever turns up, releasing any expectation of what you think may or who you think may appear, and not feeling that you need to see the person or hear them, but that you are connecting to the essence of them, maybe an understanding of them, allowing your imagination to conjure whatever happens to lovingly appear. And as your imagination conjures that, trusting that the imagination is very much part of the spiritual process, it's like a catalyst. It helps spirit to manifest, and without your imagination, it simply wouldn't. But that once you have assisted with that, that spirit will take over, perhaps offering something that feels like it's beyond your imagination, whether it's a feeling, an understanding, a light, a knowing, a song, a word, a gift, an animal. So just expecting gently something to shift and change in the mood, in the air, for something to appear, to emanate, to be with you internally, externally. Making space now, perhaps looking to the side of you and patting the riverbank next to you as if inviting your guide in. And when something arrives, or if something arrives, then I'm going to let you have a few minutes now, 5 minutes or so, to just be in this space and to ask questions, to have a conversation, or just to observe what happens in your own unique experience of connecting with your guides. And if at any point you feel you need to recall them in again, then you can. So I'll be quiet now and allow whatever unfolds over the next few minutes to be completely uniquely yours without my interruption. Just for the last moments now, just asking your guides or whatever happens to have presented itself, or just, if you may even just ask this to your own mind, to your own spirit, any questions you might have about the path forward. And just allowing words, songs, actions, images, dances, all kinds of things to spring to mind, allowing your mind to lead you somewhere closer to your heart. So any final questions before your guide leaves, just asking them. And even if you can't feel that you can fully connect, just ask anyway, trusting that perhaps an answer will be given at some future time. And now finally, just asking your guides, your energies, to perhaps present you with a totem. So this might be some kind of gift, a symbol, a sign, maybe even something that you can look out for in your day-to-day life that will affirm their existence. So just asking that question, please give me a sign, a totem, something to look out for. And then notice perhaps looking down into your hands by the riverbank and seeing what appears or what springs to mind. And just taking this as a true representation of how spirit may connect with you moving forward. And perhaps when you see this totem, this item in real life, you will feel it once again that you are being supported and heard and held and connected with. Just taking a moment to really take this in. Now, gently, just imagine pulling your muddy, wet legs out of the river and standing on the side of the grass, the bank, thanking your spirit guides, whatever they have chosen to impart to you or share with you or let you see, feel, hear, experience. If you haven't already, then maybe just gather their name, ask them their name before they completely vanish. And see if that comes forward, any kind of name. And then allowing them to return back to their divinity, trusting that a part of them will reside with you, helping you, guiding you. And imagine yourself just walking away now from the river, back into your life, back into your day, back into this moment. Feeling a little more open, a little more connected, ready to perhaps continue this conversation and this connection in interesting ways into the future. Taking a lovely, big, deep, reviving and refreshing breath. And then feeling your feet on the floor, wiggling fingers, toes, body, bringing a little bit of life back in. And when you're ready, returning to the room. Okay, I'll assume that Julia is still with us somewhere. How was that? Does anybody have anything they want to share from their meditation, or any questions or anything they want to talk about?
No, I find it quite hard to visualize, or those kind of things.
Did you feel anything come forward, or?
And when you first said we were by a river, I could see like an American Indian, but I don't know if that was the mind, like, okay, what could a spirit guide look like? It didn't feel like I was searching. But yeah, like you were saying before, I'm not sure what.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I mean, one of my spirit guides is like a Native American Indian, and I really struggled with that because it just felt like I was making it up, and also it seems like too convenient and cliched. But at the same time, when I think about it, I had that same American Indian in my mind as a child, and it's something that I felt connected with my entire life. And perhaps, we don't know really how long Indigenous people were in America, but if they go back thousands of years, which I'm sure they would have done since a very long time, then, and they were particularly spiritual, then perhaps if you are on a spiritual path, it would make sense that a Native American would be your guide, particularly on this kind of spiritual path where we're calling in elements and working with nature and Mother Earth. Because I struggled with believing that I actually had a Native American spirit guide, because it just felt like, well, that's obvious, isn't it? But like I say, I remember hurting my back when I was a child. I must have only been 3 or 4 years old, jumping on a mattress and really hurting my back. I don't really remember having any injuries as a child, but I remember that being painful and having to lay down. And I remember whilst laying down having a vision in my head, although it probably again seemed like imagination. I didn't think of it as a spirit guide at the time, but this vision in my head of this young Native American man on a plane, and just feeling so much love for this character, So when I look back on it like that, I'm like, where did he come from? I don't know, but it seems like there's still this connection. And when I go back to my spirit guides, he's always there. And I've had experiences where it's almost certain, but then I feel quite embarrassed and a bit like what's the word? Borrowing from somebody else's culture. But it's also repetitive in there. So I guess just sit with that and see, why not? It's an interesting one. Maybe just open your heart to maybe that being a possibility. And even if it is a projection of your own mind to give your spirit guide form. And if that feels like a beautiful form and a form that you can acknowledge and that you would like to explore, again, why not? If you honor it, and perhaps do some reading about that culture and what it would present, or how it might feel fitting to your life or what you want from your life.
Thank you.
Julia, do you want to share anything? You struggled again. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And yeah, I think these days when I go into, I mean, I did it along with you, and obviously I couldn't do it to the same extent in terms of the meditation, but I just shut my eyes and was like, okay, what do you have to say to me? And I felt like they were right there. And it does, to a certain extent, feel a bit like imagination, but then it also feels like I'm not making up their part of it. And I think sometimes we're so trained by society to have certain ways of understanding the world that are more scientific or clear, or that actually to rely on one's own, I don't know, intuition or imagination feels really unnatural and difficult. But actually I think it's worth pursuing. And yeah, and like you say, Kate, if yours was only fleeting, then maybe try and grab that again and give yourself permission to explore that connection a little bit more and see if it, you know, it may grow, it may become something more. And yeah, do listen to it again when your head's less full, and do continue the conversation outside of here and outside of meditation. So perhaps thinking more on what you would like your spirit guides to help you with in life, and asking them for help and seeing what arises, asking for a sign maybe that would help affirm it for you. And you know what, maybe just not even anything specific, just like, I want my spirit guides, please send me a sign so that I know that you are in my life, that you're present, and then just be open to some little mini miracle. See what comes up. And I think, like I said before, it can be a bit of it can feel like a bit of a one-way relationship. Like I don't often go in to meet with mine. I just trust that they're there. Because there is that cynical part of me that's like, I'm just talking to myself. But I also think I'm not. So yeah, I think like you could go to, I have to be really honest about that, because that's my experience. So I believe that they're there, but I also feel like I'm a bit nuts and I'm talking to myself. And I wouldn't be being fair if I didn't say that, but I think the being nuts and talking to myself thing plays a really big part in that spiritual connection. I don't know. Maybe a psychiatrist would have something to say about that. But I do think there's a whole part of life that we don't connect to because we're not imaginative, or we're not creative, or we don't allow ourselves to explore it, or the expression of it, or we give it to priests to do for us. But actually the work of divining and connecting to the divine starts with imagination. And this is where I know tarot proves it right for me time and time and time again, because every single tarot reading I sit with, I get the cards out and I let my imagination be sparked, and everybody sits there and goes, yeah. So there's something there. So whether it's a tarot card reading and connecting to another person, or connecting to a beautiful loving entity that we cannot capture fully or see physically in front of us, there is so much more there. So it's just that continual role of keeping that conversation going, even if it feels like you're talking to yourself, you know, like praying, talking to a God that you have no tangible evidence of, but sometimes the prayers are answered even in small and unexpected ways, or the signs come, or you find yourself compelled to a spiritual path. The spirit guides are all part of that, and you can take this forward in whatever way you like. It could be something you pursue, or something that you just leave where it is and maybe work on something else, or do something that feels more here and now, like, I don't know, astrology or runes or tarot, or stuff that's more tool like. But I definitely think spirit guides are there to be explored. And so I'm glad that you came here today and that you did explore them a little bit, and I hope that it does create some kind of opening towards perhaps a bit more of a connection and a relationship with them. And thank you for listening to me and my thoughts on the matter, which I don't think I've ever expressed out loud. Probably I did a little bit in my book back in, it's just up there, so I'm just looking at it, back in the day, but it feels I'm older and slightly wiser now. I don't know. So I just have to share my thoughts on that, and the complexities of it, and the fact that our own mind can get in the way, and we can be cynical and we can believe at the same time, and just open to whatever comes, and maybe do the meditation again, and do the meditation in your own. You don't have to even listen to this one again. Just lay in the bed and take some breaths and think, if I have a spirit guide, what do you have to say to me today? And then just let your imagination spark a little bit and see where you go and see where it leads you, and see what comes in that perhaps doesn't feel like it came from you. Okay, so I'm going to go, and apologies, by the way, as well, for last night and having to cancel the session at the last minute. My daughter was really playing up, and I think she's actually said to me today that she did it on purpose to see what I would do about the meeting. And I said, well, obviously you have to come first, but can we not do that again, please? Oh, I'm sorry you're feeling anxious, Julia. Hope you feel better soon. Okay, have a beautiful rest of your evening. And we have a couple of meetings next week, and we have an early morning summer solstice one at 6 a.m. on the summer solstice. So I'm really looking forward to that. All right then, lovelies. Speak soon. Bye.